A girl of barely 8 years old, with an extraordinary mind, unveiled a scheme that was stealing millions, while the company's best experts remained blind to the truth right before their eyes. Before we dive into the story, leave a comment below saying where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The autumn rain lashed against New York City's skyscrapers, transforming the windows of TechVision's imposing headquarters into vertical waterfalls that distorted the view of the city below. The grey and heavy sky perfectly reflected the mood inside the building, especially on the 87th floor, where James Thompson, CEO of the company valued at billions of dollars, observed the storm with tired and deep eyes, his shoulders visibly heavy with the weight of bad news that kept arriving. The last board meeting had been brutal. Investors questioning his decisions, analysts predicting even steeper drops in stock prices, and the growing sense that something fundamental was wrong with his company. The company he had built from scratch, with nothing more than his mathematical talent and a vision that others called impossible. James adjusted his Italian tie, a nervous habit he had developed during the last months of crisis. The reflection in the glass showed a man who looked much older than his 34 years. Deep, dark circles, premature expression lines, and that look of someone who hasn't slept properly for weeks. "The numbers simply don't add up, sir," repeated Rebecca Foster, the impeccably dressed chief financial officer who had been recruited from the financial district barely 2 years ago, with impeccable credentials and recommendations that seemed too good to be true at the time. Now her clinically professional voice echoed through the minimalist office. "We lost almost 30 million in the last quarter, and our auditors can't identify the source. It's as if the money is simply evaporating." Rebecca slid a premium leather portfolio across the tempered glass table. The reports inside were devastating. Descending graphs, red numbers, and projections showing an even bleaker future if the trend continued. James ran his hands over his face, feeling each of the lines that the last months had prematurely carved into his skin, like a map of worries that deepened each day. The rough feel of his unshaven beard, another sign of his recent personal neglect, reminded him how long it had been since he truly felt in control. At 34 years old, he was the youngest CEO of a Fortune 500 company, having founded TechVision with revolutionary algorithms developed in his college dorm room. The Wall Street Journal had called him the Mozart of algorithms, a nickname that once filled him with pride, but now sounded like a cruel joke. Now everything he had built, every line of code, every sleepless night, every personal sacrifice, was threatened by a seemingly inexplicable financial hemorrhage that not even his mathematically brilliant mind could decipher. James turned away from the window with renewed determination in his gaze. He hadn't come this far to give up without a fight. That wasn't who he was, never had been. "Hire external specialists," he ordered, his voice firm despite the fatigue. "I want the best data analysts, the best mathematicians, the best financial researchers. I don't care what it costs. Pay whatever it takes. Someone somewhere will find where that money is going." Rebecca nodded efficiently, taking notes on her latest tablet, her slender, perfectly manicured fingers gliding across the screen. "Should I assume you want this discreetly? We can't risk the press discovering we're conducting an internal investigation of this magnitude." "Obviously," James responded, irritation momentarily piercing his professional facade. "The last thing we need is a sensationalist journalist speculating about fraud and embezzlement while we're still trying to understand what's happening." Rebecca took a few more notes before looking at him again. "I also suggest canceling the Bring Your Child to Work Day scheduled for tomorrow, considering the situation. Having children running through the hallways while we try to deal with this crisis seems unwise." James walked to his desk, considering the suggestion. The annual event had been his idea from the beginning, part of his effort to create a corporate culture that valued family and work-life balance, something he himself had never experienced, having grown up in foster homes after losing his parents in a car accident at age 5. After a moment, he shook his head. No, let's keep the event as planned. We need to maintain appearances. The last thing we need is to fuel rumors about company problems by canceling a traditional event at the last minute. Besides, his voice softened almost imperceptibly, revealing a vulnerability he rarely allowed others to see. The kids are looking forward to this. I'm not going to disappoint them because of our incompetence in finding a financial leak. Rebecca seemed to want to protest, but only nodded professionally. As you wish. I'll arrange the hiring of specialists immediately. I have some names in mind. Use your discretion, James concluded, dismissing her with a slight gesture. But I want results, Rebecca. No more excuses or mysteries. I want to know where that money is going and why. After Rebecca's departure, James remained alone in his office, immersed in silence, interrupted only by the constant rhythm of rain on the windows. He returned to the reports, studying them again, hoping to see something he had missed, some hidden pattern, some anomaly that would explain everything. Hours passed as he reviewed spreadsheets, algorithms, transaction flows, audit reports, until the numbers and graphs began to blend before his exhausted eyes. As a brilliant mathematician, a child prodigy who had solved advanced calculus equations at 8 years old, he had always trusted his ability to find patterns where others saw only chaos. But this time, the answer eluded him completely, like an elusive melody he couldn't capture no matter how hard he tried. When he finally left the office, it was past midnight. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a washed and silent city. In his penthouse overlooking Central Park, James couldn't sleep, tormented by the mystery threatening to destroy everything he had worked for. It wasn't just a company, it was his legacy, his redemption, his proof that an orphaned child with nothing more than talent and determination could reach the top, and he wasn't ready to see it crumble. The next morning, TechVision's main lobby buzzed with the chaotic and joyful energy of dozens of children accompanying their parents. Bring Your Child to Work Day had transformed the normally sober corporate atmosphere into something vibrant and unpredictable. James observed from a safe distance, a polite smile fixed on his face as he greeted employees and their families. His personal assistant, Jennifer Davis, an efficient middle-aged woman who had worked with him for years and probably knew him better than anyone alive, remained at his side, murmuring names and relevant details before each group approached to greet him. Robert Martinez, product development, married to Lisa, children David and Emma, 10 and 8, she whispered moments before the well-groomed manager approached with 2 smiling children. Mr. Martinez, how nice to see your family today. James greeted with the practiced smoothness of someone accustomed to corporate social interactions. David, Emma, are you enjoying the tour of your father's company? While the children responded animatedly, James maintained the smile. But his mind remained partially focused on the financial mystery. Part of him resented the distraction, but another part, the one that remembered what it was like to be a child longing for attention and approval, insisted on being present for these moments. Among the crowd of well-dressed executives and their privileged children, few noticed the discreet entrance of Sarah Williams, one of the building's cleaning staff, with her daughter. Unlike the other employees who had planned ahead, bringing their children in elegant clothes and prepared for the event, Sarah seemed nervous and out of place, as if she wasn't sure she really belonged there. Emily, her barely 8-year-old daughter, wore a simple pink dress, already faded from excessive use and washing, contrasting sharply with the brand-name clothes of the other children. Her dark brown hair was pulled back in a simple braid, and she carried a worn backpack full of books that seemed too heavy for her small body. But most notable were her eyes, large, dark brown, and possessing an almost disturbing intensity, as if she were constantly calculating, analyzing, absorbing everything around her at an impossible speed. "Mom, do I really have to stay here?" Emily whispered in English, her voice low but articulating in a surprisingly mature way for her age. "I can stay at the public library studying. They have that book on tensor calculus I wanted to read." Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand gently but firmly. The supervisor said all employees can bring their children today, honey. It's a special opportunity. And your school principal said you need more social interaction with other kids. She paused, her voice softening. Please, just for today, for me. Emily sighed deeply, the kind of sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world on such small shoulders. Since her teachers had discovered her extraordinary IQ of 180 the previous year, her life had become complicated in ways that no one seemed to truly understand. The other children found her strange or intimidating. Adults treated her like a curiosity or a problem to solve, and she just wanted to be alone with her advanced mathematics and theoretical physics books, the only ones that truly made sense in a confusing world. "Can I at least stay reading in some quiet corner?" she asked, a small concession. Sarah smiled, relieved. "Yes, of course. You can stay in the cleaning staff's break room. That's why I brought your books, right?" Emily nodded, protectively clutching her worn backpack. Inside was her most precious treasure, notebooks full of equations and theories that no 8-year-old child should be able to understand, let alone formulate independently. "I have to clean the executive floor this morning," Sarah explained, checking her cheap watch. "It's a busy day, especially with all these kids making more mess than usual." There was a note of pride in her voice. Pride for the honest work that allowed her, an immigrant who had arrived in the city with almost nothing, to be able to support her brilliant daughter alone. "Behave, stay in the break room when I pass by there, and we'll meet for lunch at 12:30, okay?" "Yes, Mom," Emily responded automatically, but her eyes were already wandering over the impressive marble and glass lobby, registering architectural patterns, calculating structural angles, and observing the flow of people like variables in a complex dynamic system. When Sarah walked away to start her shift, Emily observed the other children being guided on organized tours, receiving corporate gifts and constant attention from employees designated to entertain them. One group passed by a virtual reality demonstration of the company's latest products. Another was receiving a simplified talk about how TechVision's technology made the world better. No one paid attention to the small girl with the heavy backpack who silently moved away from the group. Her natural curiosity combined with her extraordinary intelligence, leading her toward the upper floors. While the other children followed the planned itinerary, Emily followed the mathematical calculations in her mind, which told her that the most interesting places were rarely those shown to visitors. On the 87th floor, James Thompson was about to enter another crisis meeting with his executive team when the light in his office flickered briefly. A momentary oscillation that most people wouldn't even notice, but which irritated him deeply. The maintenance technicians had mentioned that the new energy management system was presenting intermittent problems, another small inconvenience adding to his growing list of concerns. The meeting was as frustrating as he feared. The same impossible numbers, the same questions without answers, the same theories leading to dead ends. Rebecca Foster presented a preliminary report from the external consultants who had begun investigating the day before. Expensive specialists who so far had offered nothing beyond what their own team already knew. "We need more time," Rebecca concluded, her expression perfectly composed, but with an underlying tension in her voice that James hadn't noticed before. "They've just started analyzing the complete structure of our transactions." When the meeting finally ended, James felt a headache beginning to form behind his eyes. "I'm going to work alone for an hour," he informed Jennifer, who was waiting outside the conference room. "No interruptions, please." She nodded understandingly. "I'll get something for your headache," she offered, with the perception that came from years of working together. James allowed himself a small, grateful smile before returning to his office. He needed time to think, to reorganize his thoughts, to approach the problem from a completely new angle. Something was escaping them all, and he was determined to discover what. When he returned to the office hours later, after an impromptu meeting with the information technology department, something was different. His whiteboard, normally immaculate when not in use, James was known for his almost obsessive perfectionism regarding his workspace, was now covered with complex equations written with a red marker. Equations he didn't immediately recognize, but which clearly represented some kind of advanced algorithmic analysis. He froze in the doorway, processing the scene before him. No one had permission to use his office in his absence. No one had permission to touch his whiteboard. And no one in his company should be working on this specific type of advanced mathematics without his knowledge. "Jennifer!" he called, his voice tense with a mixture of anger and concern. Jennifer appeared in the doorway almost instantly, confused by her boss's alarmed tone. "Yes, Mr. Thompson." "Who was in my office?" he demanded, pointing to the board covered with equations. Jennifer adjusted her glasses, clearly surprised. "No one, Mr. Thompson. I've been at my desk the entire time since you left for the meeting in the IT department. And this?" He gestured toward the board, his exasperation growing. "This just appeared by itself?" Jennifer approached, visibly perplexed. "I have no idea, sir. The only time I left my desk was to get your coffee and painkillers, but that was barely 2 minutes maximum. The door remained closed as you requested." James felt a chill run through his spine. If Jennifer hadn't seen anyone enter, and he implicitly trusted his assistant, then how had these equations appeared on his board? He approached the board, studying the equations more closely. It wasn't just the advanced mathematics that surprised him, but the approach, elegant, unconventional, and profoundly original. It was sophisticated mathematical notation, the kind that only someone with advanced knowledge in algorithmic theory and financial systems analysis could formulate. But most disturbing was that the equations seemed to be analyzing the exact problem his team couldn't solve, the mysterious financial loss threatening his company. As he tried to decipher the complete meaning, his eyes were drawn to a small drawing in the lower corner, a seemingly random sequence of numbers circled and connected by lines, forming a pattern reminiscent of a star constellation. Next to it, in childish but perfectly legible handwriting, "The money is going here." James felt his heart accelerate. Someone had invaded his office and left, what, a clue, a threat, an elaborate joke, or something more sinister? Perhaps an indication that whoever was causing the financial problems was playing with him, leaving provocative hints. "Jennifer, check the security cameras immediately," he ordered, adrenaline now overcoming fatigue. "I want to know exactly who entered this office in the last 90 minutes, and notify the security chief. I want this building on alert." While Jennifer quickly left to execute the order, James photographed the board with his cell phone, capturing each section in detail. Then he began transcribing the equations onto his computer, determined to understand what they were communicating. Something about those formulas intrigued him deeply, not just because of their complexity, but because they approached the problem from a perspective his team of specialists hadn't considered. They analyzed not the transactions themselves, but the temporal patterns between them, seeking microscopic correlations that would be invisible in conventional analysis. Hours later, after immersing himself in the equations and running simulations based on them, James stood up abruptly from his chair, stunned by the revelation. Whoever had written this had identified something all the specialists had missed, a subtle anomaly in the company's financial processing algorithms. A mathematical backdoor, almost imperceptible, that diverted fractions of pennies from each transaction to a set of offshore accounts, so perfectly camouflaged it seemed part of the base code itself. It was brilliant, terrifying, and completely illegal. "Mr. Thompson?" Jennifer's voice interrupted his thoughts. She stood in the doorway holding a tablet, her expression a mixture of confusion and concern. "Did you find who invaded my office?" he asked, still processing the magnitude of what he had discovered. Jennifer extended the tablet hesitantly. "The cameras show only one person entering your office during that period, and, well, it's not what we expected." James took the tablet, activating the security video. The recording showed the empty corridor of the 87th floor, and then, surprisingly, A small figure appeared. A girl. A girl of about 8 years old, with dark hair braided and a faded pink dress. He watched, incredulous, as the small girl looked both ways down the empty corridor, then carefully tried the handle of his office door. Finding it unlocked, she entered furtively, silently closing the door behind her. The camera angle changed to the inside of the office, a view showing the girl quickly looking around, clearly impressed but not intimidated by the luxurious environment. Then, with surprising determination, she walked directly to the whiteboard, took a red marker, and began to write. Her movements quick and precise, as if she were transcribing something she could clearly see in her mind. The video showed the girl working methodically for nearly 20 minutes, filling the board with increasingly complex equations, occasionally pausing to reflect before continuing. There was no hesitation, no errors, no corrections, just a continuous flow of advanced mathematical thought emanating from a girl who could barely reach the top of the board without standing on her toes. "Who is this girl?" James finally asked, his voice almost a whisper of amazement. "Apparently the daughter of one of the cleaning staff," Jennifer responded, checking her notes. "Sarah Williams works the day shift, mainly on the executive floors. The girl came with her as part of today's Bring Your Child to Work event." "A cleaning lady," James repeated, his mind still trying to reconcile the image of the small girl with the brilliant mathematical equations that could have been created by someone with a doctorate in computational mathematics. "And the girl? Who is she?" "Emily Williams, 8 years old. That's all we have in the visitor records." James looked again at the board, then at the frozen image of the girl on the tablet. "Find her, now." Meanwhile, Emily was hidden in the small cleaning staff break room in the basement, far from the glamour and commotion of the upper floors. The room was simple: some worn chairs, a plastic table, a small television that rarely worked properly, and a noisy refrigerator. But for Emily, at that moment, it was a sanctuary. She was deeply absorbed in her worn notebook, solving partial differential equations that would be at home in a doctoral dissertation, not in the hands of an 8-year-old girl. Since she had seen the financial algorithms displayed on an unprotected monitor while wandering the corridors during her unauthorized exploration, her mind couldn't let go of the problem. There was something wrong with those numbers, something that screamed at her like a false note in a symphony. The pattern was so obvious to her. How could all those intelligent adults with their expensive degrees and impressive titles not see it? The door opened abruptly, and Emily looked up to find her mother, the normally calm face now pale and worried, accompanied by an elegantly dressed woman in an impeccable business suit, who immediately seemed out of place in the modest break room. "Emily," Sarah said, her trembling voice betraying nervousness. "This lady is Mrs. Davis. She says, Mr. Thompson, the boss of everyone, wants to talk to you. What did you do, honey?" The fear in her mother's eyes made Emily's stomach sink. She knew she shouldn't have gone out exploring, knew she shouldn't have entered that office. But when she saw the financial reports on the table and identified the diversion pattern, she simply couldn't hold back. The numbers were wrong, and no one seemed to notice. It was like seeing someone about to fall off a cliff and not shouting a warning. Emily slowly closed her notebook, her heart pounding against her ribs. "I didn't do anything wrong," she replied quietly, knowing it was technically a lie. "I just solved a problem, nothing more." Jennifer Davis studied the girl with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. "Mr. Thompson would like to speak with you and your mother immediately," she said, her tone professional but not threatening. Minutes later, Emily entered the immense penthouse office, holding her mother's trembling hand. The space was larger than the entire apartment they lived in the Bronx. Wide, floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of New York, furniture that Emily intuited cost more than her mother's annual salary, and cutting-edge technology on every surface. But what captured her attention was the man standing next to the whiteboard, covered with her equations. Tall, elegantly dressed with the type of bearing that only came from a life of privilege, James Thompson was exactly as business magazines portrayed him: imposing, intimidating, and intensely focused. Sarah, mortified by the possibility of losing her job, the only one she had gotten after 6 months of searching when they arrived in the city, began apologizing profusely in halting English. "Mr. Thompson, please forgive my daughter. She didn't want to cause trouble. She's a good girl, just very curious, very intelligent. She doesn't always understand about private property. I'll explain to her. I promise it won't happen again." James, however, ignored the pleas, his eyes fixed on the small figure at her side. "You wrote this?" He pointed to the whiteboard, his voice controlled but intense. Emily looked at her worn shoes for a moment, then raised her chin and nodded, refusing to cower despite the fear. "The numbers were wrong. I fixed them." "Emily!" Sarah reprimanded, horrified by the direct response. James crossed his arms over his chest, studying her as if she were some rare specimen under a microscope. "How do you know about financial processing algorithms? How did you understand our proprietary system?" Emily shrugged, a surprisingly adult gesture in such a small body. "It's just math," she responded, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "I saw the patterns on the big monitor in the conference room when I was exploring. Someone wrote code to steal money. It's small in each transaction, but it adds up a lot when you process billions per day." James's jaw dropped slightly, the first crack in his perfectly controlled facade. "You realize that just by looking at the data?" "Numbers always speak to me," Emily responded, her voice gaining confidence as she spoke about the subject she truly understood. "They have patterns like music. When something is wrong, it's like a false note. I just followed the false note until I found who was playing wrong on purpose." James approached, kneeling to be at eye level with the girl, a gesture that seemed to surprise both Jennifer and Sarah. "How old are you, Emily?" 8 years, 3 months and 17 days, Emily responded with the precision typical of her mathematical mind. Sarah, sensing they might not be in as much trouble as she initially feared, explained shyly, "Emily is special, sir. Her teachers say she's a prodigy. She has an IQ of 180 and got a partial scholarship at the international school, but..." She hesitated, shame coloring her voice. "We can't afford the rest of the tuition, even with my second job. So she goes to public school, but the teachers don't know what to do with her." James's face remained impassive, but something changed in his eyes, a flash of recognition perhaps. He studied the girl for a long moment, then stood up and walked to his bookshelf, an impressive collection of books occupying an entire wall. He selected a specific volume, an advanced text on algorithmic theory with his own name on the cover as author. Flipping to a specific page, he returned and showed the open book to Emily. "Do you understand this?" Emily examined the page with her large dark eyes, instantly absorbing the content. After a few seconds, she nodded slowly. "Yes, but there's an error in the third equation. The partial derivative should have a negative sign for the case of a non-Euclidean space." James checked, then let out an incredulous laugh. She was absolutely right. It was a minor typographical error that had gone unnoticed in the edition, one that very few readers, all with doctorates in mathematics, had noticed and mentioned. If this story touches your heart, don't forget to leave a like to help us reach more people. We're just beginning this incredible journey. Keep watching to discover how this little genius will change this millionaire's life forever. "Have you seen this book before?" he asked, a new note of respect in his voice. Emily shook her head. "No, sir. But it's just a natural extension of Riemann's work on differential geometry applied to dynamical systems." A perplexed silence filled the office. Jennifer seemed to be holding her breath. Sarah seemed divided between bewildering pride and continued concern. And James was having an epiphany. Looking at the anxious mother and extraordinary daughter, James made an impulsive decision that completely contradicted his normally calculated and cautious nature. "Mrs. Williams," he began, his voice softer than Jennifer could remember hearing in years. "I would like to offer your daughter a summer internship in our mathematical analysis department." Sarah blinked several times, obviously confused. An internship for Emily? But she's just a child. A child who just identified a problem that my best analysts with decades of experience and doctorates from elite institutions couldn't solve in months. "Yeah," he turned to Emily, speaking directly to her with the same respect he would grant a colleague. "Of course, it would only be a few hours after school, with your mother present. Supervised environment, work appropriate for your age, despite your exceptional talent. And," he added, looking at Sarah, "we'll pay very well for your time. Executive-level consulting." Sarah seemed completely stunned by the proposal, as if she couldn't fully comprehend what was being offered. "But why?" "Because talent like hers appears once in a generation, if at all," James replied simply, "and because she may have just saved my company." Emily's eyes lit up with a genuine spark for the first time since they entered the office, not of fear or defense, but of true excitement. "Can I work with real numbers, real problems, not just those boring exercises they give me at school?" "The most challenging problems we have," James promised, surprised by his own enthusiasm. Sarah still seemed to hesitate, her maternal protective instinct clearly in conflict with the desire to offer opportunities to her daughter. "Mr. Thompson, that's very generous, but I'm not sure it's appropriate. She's still so young." "Please, Mom," Emily pleaded, squeezing her mother's hand, her childish voice momentarily piercing through her usual seriousness. "It would be like playing, but with interesting problems, the best puzzles of all." Faced with her daughter's genuine enthusiasm, something rare and precious to witness, Sarah gradually gave in. "If it's what you really want, honey. But only a few hours a week, and I'll be present, and no staying up late working like you do with your books." While Sarah established her conditions, James exchanged a silent look with Jennifer, who subtly nodded, understanding the unspoken instruction: organize everything, create the appropriate space, prepare the documentation. "Excellent," he said, when Sarah finally finished her list of requirements. "Jennifer will handle the details. Can we start next week? We have..." He hesitated, then decided on transparency. "We have an urgent situation that needs to be resolved." "We can start now," Emily offered immediately, to her mother's consternation. James smiled, a genuine smile that rarely appeared in his work environment. "Your enthusiasm is admirable, but your mother is right. We need to do this properly. Monday will be perfect." As mother and daughter prepared to leave, James handed Sarah a folder. "These are some of the financial reports we're analyzing, obviously with sensitive information removed. If Emily wants to give them a preliminary look over the weekend..." Emily practically tore the folder from her mother's hands, her eyes gleaming with the same intensity James recognized in himself when he was young, the insatiable thirst for problems to solve, puzzles to decipher. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson," the girl said formally, clutching the folder as if it were the most precious treasure. When the door closed behind them, Jennifer turned to James, an expression of amazement still on her face. "In all my years working with you, I've never seen anything like this. That girl is a genius," James concluded simply. "The type of mind that appears once in a generation. Do you really believe she found the source of the financial problem?" James looked at the whiteboard, the complex equations written by such small hands. "I'm almost certain. And if she's right, we're not just dealing with a code error or system failure. We're dealing with deliberate fraud, skillfully executed. Someone inside Tech Vision is stealing, and stealing on a large scale." That evening, while Sarah prepared a simple meal of rice, beans, and chicken in their small Bronx apartment, Emily was already completely immersed in the copies of the financial reports James had given her. Her extraordinary mind identified patterns and anomalies that would go unnoticed, even by trained financial analysts with years of experience. "I found you," she whispered in English, tracing a specific sequence of transactions that unequivocally pointed to the fraud's origin. The pattern was elegant in its simplicity, almost admirable in its ingenuity, but it was theft, and that she understood very well, even with only 8 years. Sarah observed her daughter from the small kitchen, a mixture of pride and concern in her gaze. "Honey, come eat. Those papers will still be there after dinner?" Emily barely heard, lost in the world of numbers that had always made more sense to her than the world of people. "Just one more minute, Mom. I'm almost done with this part." Sarah sighed, recognizing that expression. Emily could spend hours, even days, absorbed in a mathematical problem that captured her interest. It was as if the rest of the world simply disappeared. 5 minutes, Sarah said firmly, "or dinner will get cold." Emily nodded distractedly, her fingers tracing invisible lines between numbers on one page and codes on another. She could visualize the entire scheme now, the parasitic algorithm inserted into the main code, the fractional transactions diverted so subtly they resembled normal statistical noise, the offshore accounts carefully structured to receive the funds. And more disturbing, she could see who had authorized the changes in the code, who had access to the accounts, who was at the center of the elaborate network. "Oh," she whispered to herself, her expression changing to something darker. "It's you." The next day, the atmosphere at TechVision was one of palpable tension. Based on Emily's initial discoveries, James had ordered a secret audit focused specifically on the areas she had identified. Rebecca Foster entered James's office, looking irritated. "May I know why there's an external audit team investigating my department without my prior knowledge?" James carefully studied his chief financial officer. Rebecca had been a brilliant hire, or so everyone thought. Harvard graduate with experience at major banks, she had come with impeccable recommendations and had quickly become one of his most trusted executives. "We're conducting surprise audits in all departments," James lied gently. "Standard procedure after the discrepancies we found." Rebecca relaxed slightly, though her eyes remained vigilant. "I should have been informed. As CFO, I need to be involved in all financial matters." "Of course, my mistake." James smiled, though his eyes remained cold. "Rebecca, do you know Michael Chen from the IT department?" She hesitated for a fraction of a second, almost imperceptible, but James was watching carefully. "Vaguely. He works with security systems, right?" "Among other things," James responded, observing how she drummed her fingers on the table, a nervous tick he had never noticed before. After Rebecca's departure, James received Jennifer and Emily in his office. Sarah, initially reluctant to leave her daughter alone, had been convinced to continue her work on the lower floors, knowing Emily would be safe with the CEO himself. "I found more evidence," Emily said without preamble, spreading papers on James's table. "The code was modified exactly 2 weeks after Mrs. Foster started working here. And look at this," she pointed to a series of printed timestamps. "These modifications were made using Mr. Chen's credentials, but always when he was in documented meetings. Someone used his access." James felt a chill run through his spine. Michael Chen was the head of cybersecurity, with access to practically all systems. If his credentials had been compromised, "There's more," Emily continued, excited by the puzzle. "The transfers always occur in multiples of pi, truncated at the 6th decimal place. It's like a signature." Jennifer, who was watching with admiration, commented, "It's incredible how she can see these things." "It's not difficult," Emily shrugged. "People complicate math, but it's everywhere, like music. You just need to listen to the pattern." At that moment, something on James's computer screen caught his attention, an alert that someone was attempting to access the backup server using Michael Chen's credentials. But Michael was at a conference in Boston, something James knew with certainty. "Jennifer, call security to the 76th floor, server sector, immediately and discreetly." Emily looked at the alert, then at James. "They know we've discovered." Her eyes widened when she saw something else on the screen. "Wait, Mr. Thompson. They're trying to delete the records. Look here." She pointed to a series of commands executing in real time. James watched the screen, his pulse accelerating. "Can you stop it?" The 8-year-old girl frowned, her fingers already moving across the keyboard with surprising speed. "I can try to block the outgoing ports, but I need administrator access." She looked up at him. "Can you give me your credentials?" James hesitated only a second before leaning over the keyboard and entering his password. In any other circumstance, it would have been unthinkable, giving highest-level access to a child. But this wasn't just any child, and this was definitely not a normal circumstance. Emily worked frantically, her small fingers flying across the keyboard while lines of code appeared on the screen. They're using an automated script to delete specific log files, but they made a mistake. A small smile appeared on her face. "They forgot the temporary cache files. Everything is still there. I just need to..." The door burst open and Jennifer entered with 2 security officers. "The team is on the way to the 76th, sir." "Tell them to hurry," James responded, without taking his eyes off the screen where Emily continued working. "And don't let anyone leave the building." Emily pressed enter with a triumphant stroke. "Done. I blocked remote access and copied all log files to a secure location. They even have the ones they tried to delete." James looked at her with a mixture of amazement and gratitude. "You're extraordinary." The girl's cheeks blushed slightly at the compliment, but she quickly returned attention to the screen. "There's something else, Mr. Thompson. The access patterns show this has been going on for almost 2 years. It wasn't just Mrs. Foster. There are at least 4 more people involved." The following hours unfolded in a frenzy of activity. The security team found an unknown technician trying to access the main servers, a man who would later be identified as a longtime associate of Rebecca Foster. When they stopped him, he tried to flee, but security guards blocked all exits from the building exactly as James had ordered. James, recognizing the dangers of the situation, instructed Jennifer to take Emily to a secure room and call Sarah. The girl protested, wanting to help, but James was inflexible. "You've already helped more than you imagine, Emily. But now we're dealing with people who are stealing millions. It's too dangerous for you to be involved." Emily's eyes filled with tears of frustration. "But I haven't finished tracing the entire scheme. There are more people involved, and we'll find them all thanks to your brilliant work," James assured her, surprising himself by hugging the small girl. "I promise." While Emily was taken to a safe place, James convened an emergency meeting with his security team and lawyers. The evidence gathered, combined with the incident on the servers, was sufficient to confront Rebecca. "Let's do this discreetly," James instructed. "I don't want her to sense that we know everything." Rebecca was invited to James's office for an audit update. When she entered, her usual confidence seemed unshakable, but James perceived the slight tremor in her hands when she saw the company lawyers and 2 federal agents sitting at the conference table. "What is this?" she asked, her voice failing slightly. James slid a folder across the table. "We know about the algorithm, Rebecca. We know about the offshore transfers. We know how you used Michael's credentials." Rebecca's face paled, but she quickly recovered. "I don't know what you're talking about. Who filled your head with these absurd theories?" James smiled coldly. "Someone much smarter than both of us." He opened the folder, revealing the detailed analyses and patterns identified by Emily, carefully transcribed in technical language by the forensic team. "The question now is, who else is involved?" For a moment, Rebecca held firm. Then, seeing the extent of evidence against her, her shoulders slumped. "You don't understand. It was never for me. It's bigger than you can imagine." One of the federal agents spoke up. "Miss Foster, I advise you not to say anything more without your lawyer present." In the days that followed, the investigation revealed the extent of the scheme. Rebecca Foster was working for a group of rival investors who had orchestrated a complex plan. First bleed the company financially, then manipulate its stock for a hostile takeover. More than 12 people were identified as part of the conspiracy, including 2 members of TechVision's board. The conference room had transformed into an improvised command center. Federal agents, corporate lawyers, and the internal security team worked countless hours, unraveling the complex web of fraud. James spent nights examining documents, giving statements, and coordinating with authorities. In the midst of all this chaos, he insisted that Emily and her mother be protected. "They're key witnesses," he had told his security chief. "No one approaches them without my explicit authorization." A week after Rebecca's arrest, James met with Emily and Sarah in his office. The girl had been at home on security recommendation, and it was evident that the absence of the intellectual puzzle had unsettled her. "Did you find everyone?" was Emily's first question, her eyes gleaming with characteristic intensity. James nodded, allowing himself a tired smile. "Thanks to your initial work, the algorithm you identified led us to discover the entire network. We recovered almost 98% of the stolen money." Emily's eyes lit up. "Almost 98%? What happened to the other 2%? It had already been transferred to accounts that will be harder to trace, but even that..." James leaned forward. "Your analysis of transfer patterns gave us clues that federal investigators are following." Sarah, who had been sitting silently, finally spoke. "Mr. Thompson, I don't know how to thank you for protecting us through all this. When I found out such powerful people were involved, I was very afraid." "You don't need to thank me, Mrs. Williams. Your daughter saved my company. It's the least I can do." He turned to Emily. "Actually, there's something I want to ask you. The federal investigators have seen your work. They're impressed, very impressed. They want to know if you'd be willing to consult on similar cases, of course in an age-appropriate way, and always with your mother present." Emily straightened in her chair, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "More puzzles like this? Can I?" Sarah looked less enthusiastic. "It's dangerous, honey. You saw what happened. That's why they would be closed cases," James quickly clarified. "Situations where the criminals are already in custody and they simply need help deciphering the patterns. Nothing that would put you in danger." James, devastated by the betrayal but grateful for the discovery, couldn't stop thinking about the small girl who had unmasked everything with her extraordinary mind. During the sleepless nights that followed, when he examined the case documents over and over, he always returned to the same thought. If an 8-year-old girl could see what all his experts couldn't see, how much more talent was being wasted due to lack of opportunities? That question tormented him more than the betrayal itself. 2 weeks after the incident, with the situation stabilized and Rebecca awaiting trial, James drove to the Bronx to visit Sarah and Emily in their modest apartment. The contrast between the luxurious penthouse where he lived and the Williams' small 2-room home was shocking, but not uncomfortable. There was something genuine and warm in the way Sarah had decorated the space with family photos and plants in recycled pots. Sarah, still uncomfortable with a millionaire's presence in her living room, served coffee and homemade cookies, while Emily showed James her advanced mathematics books. The improvised bookshelves, boards supported by cement blocks, were crammed with texts that would have intimidated most college students. "I found this one at a garage sale," Emily explained, showing him a worn book on number theory. "It only cost $20. The man selling it said it belonged to his son, who studied engineering but never used it." James flipped through the book, noting the meticulous annotations in the margins, Emily's small, precise handwriting, correcting errors and adding her own observations. "You've read all of this 3 times, Emily responded naturally. "The first time to understand, the second time to question, the third time to find the connections the author didn't mention." James felt that familiar knot in his throat. This level of critical thinking, this pure passion for knowledge, it was exactly what he had felt as a child, before the foster care system tried to crush his natural curiosity. "You saved my company," James finally said, addressing both Emily and Sarah. "But more than that, you reminded me why I started Tech Vision in the first place. It wasn't just about the money or success. It was because I believed that technology and innovation could come from anywhere, from anyone." He paused, carefully choosing his next words. I want to give back, but you need to understand that this isn't charity. It's investment, it's recognition, it's justice, in a way. Sarah began to protest, her hands wringing in her lap. Mr. Thompson, you've already done so much for us. The internship, the salary, it's not enough, James gently interrupted, placing a folder on the table. I've created an educational fund for Emily. It will cover all her educational expenses. Specialized private school in sciences, university, graduate studies, whatever she chooses. Additionally, I've hired a team of specialized tutors who will work with her in areas she wants to deepen. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Sir, it's too much. We can't accept. Mrs. Williams, James said, his voice softening even more. When I was 10 years old, a teacher saw something in me that no one else had seen. He got me a scholarship, introduced me to people who could help, fought for me when the system wanted to keep me in my place. Without him, I'd probably be working in some warehouse somewhere now, my mathematical talent completely wasted. He cleared his throat, raw emotion piercing through his usual professional composure. That teacher died 5 years ago. I could never thank him properly, but I can honor his memory by doing for Emily what he did for me. Sarah covered her mouth with her hand, tears rolling down her cheeks. Emily, noticing her mother's distress, stood up and hugged her, her own eyes gleaming with unshed tears. It's not just money, James continued, pulling more documents from his briefcase. I've also established a trust that guarantees you, Sarah, a dignified salary, working as coordinator of the new Emily program I'm creating. No more cleaning floors, though there was never any shame in that work. Now you'll coordinate a program that will identify and support talented children from marginalized communities. Sarah looked at him with disbelief. Me? But I don't have a college education. I barely finished high school. You have something much more valuable, James responded firmly. You raised a brilliant girl alone. You saw her potential when others called her weird. You fought to give her opportunities with limited resources. That experience, that perspective, it's exactly what this program needs. Emily, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. Can I still help with problems at the company? James smiled. Actually, I'm creating a special junior internship program inspired by you, for exceptional young people like you working on real problems under appropriate supervision. Emily's eyes lit up. With real problems, not those stupid things they give us at school. The most challenging problems we have, James promised, repeating his words from the first meeting. Sarah, still moved, asked, Why are you doing this, Mr. Thompson? James looked through the apartment's small window toward New York's night sky. For a moment, he saw himself again as the orphaned child who had found refuge in the certainty of numbers, who had discovered his calling through a teacher who recognized his potential. Because someone did the same thing for me once, he replied quietly. And because talents like Emily's shouldn't be wasted due to lack of opportunities. That night, while driving back to downtown, James called his lawyer. I want to add one more thing to the Emily Williams Foundation documents. A guaranteed position on our board of directors when she turns 21, if she wants it. His lawyer laughed. Planning ahead, aren't you? You don't know this girl, James replied seriously. One day, everyone will know her. 6 months later, Tech Vision had completely recovered from the crisis. Stocks were up, investor confidence restored, and James's junior internship program, now officially called the Emily Program, was receiving national attention as an innovative initiative to identify and nurture young talents in disadvantaged communities. The program had grown faster than James had anticipated. What had started as a way to honor one exceptional girl had transformed into a movement. Schools in marginalized neighborhoods throughout New York and beyond were nominating students. Sarah, in her new role, coordinated a team of 10 people who evaluated applications, organized workshops, and built bridges between these talented young people and the opportunities they deserved. The media had naturally captured the story. The girl who saved a tech empire proclaimed one headline. 8-year-old genius unravels million-dollar fraud, proclaimed another. James had done everything possible to protect Emily's privacy, but the story was too inspiring to remain hidden. What satisfied him most was seeing the tangible results. They had already identified 15 exceptional children in the first 6 months, a mathematical prodigy from Queens, a brilliant programmer from Brooklyn, an emerging scientist from Staten Island, each with their own story of struggle, each with that same fire in their eyes that Emily had. Emily, now studying at one of the country's most prestigious science schools with a full scholarship, still visited the company twice a week, working on complex mathematical problems that challenged even the most experienced analysts. But more than that, she had become a mentor for the other children in the program, sharing not only her knowledge but also her experience of navigating a world that didn't always know what to do with minds like hers. On one of those days, James found her absorbed in equations in the special laboratory he had created for her, adapted to accommodate her age and unique learning style. The walls were covered with whiteboards. Emily had insisted on multiple boards, saying she needed space for her thoughts to breathe, and each showed different aspects of the problem she was working on. "How's the new problem going?" he asked, observing the boards covered with her precise calculations. Emily smiled, a genuine smile that had become more frequent in recent months. "I've almost solved it. It's about energy optimization, right? For the new data center?" James nodded, marveled as always. "The engineers have been working on this for weeks." Emily pointed to a sequence of equations. "The solution is here. We can reduce consumption by 23% by reorganizing the processing flow according to these patterns." She paused, biting her lower lip. A gesture James had learned meant she had something more to say. "But there's something better. If we implement these additional changes here and here," she pointed to 2 different equations, "we could achieve a 32% reduction." James studied the equations, recognizing the elegance of the solution. It was revolutionary in its simplicity, the type of lateral thinking that turned impossible problems into obviousness once someone had the insight to see it. "The engineers will think you're doing magic." "It's not magic," Emily responded, that characteristic seriousness returning to her voice. "It's just seeing the patterns that are already there. Most people are trained to think a certain way, follow certain steps. But sometimes the answer comes from looking from a completely different angle. Like an 8-year-old girl entering an office where she shouldn't be," James observed with a smile. Emily laughed, that sound that had become less rare, but no less beautiful. "Exactly like that. You know," he said casually, "when you're older, I'm going to need a new chief financial officer, someone I can really trust." Emily laughed, a light and musical sound that still surprised those who only knew her serious side. "That's too boring. I want your job." James feigned indignation. "My job? CEO?" Emily shrugged, returning to her equations. "Or maybe something better. I'll think about it." James left the laboratory smiling. He had no doubts that one day Emily Williams would revolutionize not just his company, but the world. All because a small girl had had the courage to enter an office where she shouldn't be and write equations on a whiteboard. Sometimes, James thought, the greatest gifts come in the most unexpected packages, and sometimes a brilliant mind just needs a chance to shine. 5 years later, the auditorium at Columbia University was packed for the annual Technology Innovation Conference. More than 2,000 people filled every seat, and hundreds more watched the live broadcast from screens installed in the lobby. This year's conference had generated unprecedented interest, not only for the internationally renowned speakers, but for one speaker in particular who had captured the public's imagination. On stage, James Thompson, now with slightly graying hair at the temples that gave him a distinguished air, smiled proudly as he introduced the next speaker. At 41 years old, he had accomplished more than most could dream of, but he knew his greatest achievement wasn't tech vision or his personal fortune. It was what he was about to witness. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice resonating through the auditorium, 5 years ago, an 8-year-old girl walked into my office without permission and wrote equations on my whiteboard. Those equations saved my company from massive fraud and changed my understanding of what true talent means. The audience murmured with interest. Many knew the story, but hearing it directly from the protagonist added an emotional weight that newspaper articles couldn't capture. Since then, I've had the privilege of observing her growth, James continued, emotion visible in his voice. At 13, she had already published 3 articles in recognized scientific journals, including one in Nature, that revolutionized our understanding of anomaly detection systems. At 14, she patented a fraud detection algorithm that is now used by financial institutions worldwide, helping prevent losses estimated at over $5 billion annually. The audience applauded, but James raised his hand to continue. But statistics don't tell the whole story. They don't capture her humility, her generosity in mentoring other young people, her insistence that every dollar of her royalties go to the Emily program to help other children like her. Today, at only 14 years old, she's preparing to begin her doctorate in computational mathematics here at Columbia University, not because she's in a hurry to grow up, but because her mind simply cannot be contained by the limitations of traditional educational programs. James paused, his voice breaking slightly. Ladies and gentlemen, Emily Williams. The audience rose in thunderous applause as a confident teenager with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail walked onto the stage. Though still small for her age, barely reaching 5 feet, Emily radiated a presence that immediately commanded attention. She was no longer the shy girl in a faded pink dress. She wore elegant pants and a simple but professional blouse, and moved with the confidence of someone who had found their place in the world. In the front row, Sarah Williams, now operations manager for TechVision's internship program, wiped away tears of pride. Her personal transformation had been almost as remarkable as her daughter's. From cleaning lady to leader of a program that had changed the lives of hundreds of children, it was a testament that potential had no age limit. Beside her, Jennifer Davis, who had become a mentor to Emily and confidant to Sarah, smiled widely, also discreetly wiping her own tears. She had seen Emily grow from that first chaotic meeting in James's office, and every achievement felt like a personal victory. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson," Emily began, her voice clear and confident, without any trace of the nervousness one might expect from someone so young speaking before such a large audience. 5 years ago, I was just a girl who loved numbers, daughter of a cleaning lady, with no prospects beyond an educational system that didn't know how to handle me. She paused, letting her words resonate. I grew up hearing that I was weird, that I was too intense, that I needed to be more normal. My peers didn't want to play with me because I preferred solving equations at recess. Teachers didn't know where to place me because I had already surpassed the class material. And my mum, her voice softened as she looked at Sarah, worked 2 jobs to support me, wondering if she was doing the right thing by letting me be different. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. Then, by chance, I broke an important rule. I entered an office where I shouldn't be and wrote on a whiteboard that didn't belong to me. The audience laughed, but it was a warm, understanding laugh. That moment changed my life, not just because of the opportunities that came after, but because for the first time, someone saw my potential before my circumstances. Mr. Thompson didn't see a poor, misfit girl. He saw someone who could contribute, who had value, who deserved to be heard. James felt a lump in his throat, remembering the day he met the small girl in a faded pink dress, with eyes that saw patterns invisible to others. He remembered his own decision to take a risk, to trust his instinct, to give her a chance when all social and corporate precedents told him not to. Today, I want to talk about the new algorithmic security system I've developed, Emily continued. But more importantly, I want to talk about wasted potential. How many brilliant minds do we lose every day because we assume great ideas can only come from certain places, certain universities, certain contexts. While Emily presented her revolutionary system, James reflected on how an impulsive decision, allowing a child to solve an adult problem, had not only saved his company, but transformed his vision of talent and potential. The Emily program, initially created for a single child prodigy, now served more than 100 talented children from disadvantaged communities across the country, offering them opportunities that would otherwise be unattainable. After the presentation, during the reception, James found Emily surrounded by university professors and technology executives, all eager to discuss her ideas. She navigated them with surprising grace for someone so young, remaining humble but firm in her convictions. "You stole the show," James commented when he finally got a moment alone with her. Emily smiled, that same smile that had illuminated a small laboratory years earlier. "I learned from the best. How are preparations for Columbia going?" he asked, still unable to believe she was about to begin a doctorate at 14. "I'm more worried about Mom," Emily admitted. "She thinks I'm growing up too fast. She wants me to enjoy my childhood," James laughed. "Mothers tend to want that. But I can't slow down," Emily said, suddenly serious. "There are so many problems to solve, so many patterns waiting to be discovered." James recognized the intensity in her eyes, the same he had seen on the whiteboard 5 years earlier. "The anti-fraud algorithm you developed has already saved billions for the financial sector," he observed. "Not bad for someone who still can't legally drive." Emily rolled her eyes but smiled. "I'm thinking about something new, something bigger." "You're always thinking," James responded affectionately. "And that's why one day you'll really have my job." "Actually," Emily replied with a mischievous gleam in her eyes, "I'm thinking about something a bit more ambitious than CEO." "Should I be worried?" Emily laughed, that musical sound that never failed to warm James's heart. "Maybe. But you'll like it, I promise." As he watched Emily return to the admirers who were waiting, James thought about how life could change with a single moment. A girl breaking rules, a man willing to listen, a complex problem waiting for a mind that could see beyond the obvious. TechVision was no longer just a tech company, but an incubator of extraordinary talents, a place where children like Emily could transform their genius into solutions that benefited the world. And it all started with an equation on a whiteboard and a girl brave enough to write what no one else could see. Sarah approached, still moved after the presentation. Her hands trembled slightly as she held a crumpled tissue. "She's going too fast," she confessed to James, her voice filled with a mixture of pride and maternal fear. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing, letting her skip so many stages of childhood. The other mothers have daughters who play with dolls and have slumber parties. My daughter is writing her doctoral dissertation." James observed Emily, now animatedly discussing complex theories with a group of mathematics professors from MIT who had flown specifically to meet her. One of them, a 60-year-old man with 4 decades of experience, listened with the reverent attention of a student before a master, occasionally nodding and taking notes while Emily explained her new theory on anomaly detection in quantum systems. "Look how happy she is," James said softly, placing a comforting hand on Sarah's shoulder. "We're not forcing her to follow this path. We're not stealing her childhood. This is her childhood, Sarah. For Emily, solving equations is playing. Discovering patterns is her fun. Some kids collect stamps or play video games. She deciphers the universe's mysteries. We're simply not stopping her." Sarah nodded, but worry still filled her eyes. "But what about friends, teenage romance, normal experiences?" "And what is normal?" James asked gently. "Sarah, when I was Emily's age, the system wanted me to be normal. They wanted me to conform, to dumb myself down so other students wouldn't feel bad, to stop asking so many questions. If I had been normal, I'd be working in some warehouse somewhere, probably unhappy, definitely not fulfilling my potential." He paused, observing Emily laughing at something one of the professors had said. "And look at her. She has friends. Different from those other teenagers have maybe, but real friends who share her passions. The other kids in the Emily program adore her. The professors here clearly respect her. She's not alone, Sarah. She's surrounded by people who understand her. Sarah wiped her eyes again, a small sob escaping. When we arrived in this city, Emily was 3 years old. She carried a broken suitcase and the dream of a better life. I worked cleaning offices, cleaning houses, doing whatever was necessary. There were nights when I fell asleep crying, wondering if we'd ever make it. Her voice broke. And now look where we are. My daughter is giving lectures at universities. I'm coordinating a program that helps hundreds of families like ours. We have a decent apartment in a safe neighborhood. Emily has all the support she needs. She looked at James with eyes full of tears and gratitude, all because you decided to listen to a little girl who shouldn't have been in your office. No, Sarah, James gently corrected, all because you raised an extraordinary girl. All because you saw her potential when others only saw a problematic child. All because you sacrificed your comfort, your time, your energy to nurture her brilliant mind. I just opened some doors. You built the person who could walk through them. Sarah hugged him then, a spontaneous and emotional embrace that took James by surprise. In his years as CEO, he had received many handshakes, many formal thanks, but this hug, simple, honest, filled with 5 years of gratitude and maternal love, meant more than all the corporate awards he had received. When they separated, both had tears in their eyes. Jennifer, watching from nearby, also discreetly wiped her eyes, moved by the scene. Emily approached then, noticing the emotional moment between her mother and James. "Are you crying?" she asked, her tone of scientist-observer mixing with filial concern. "Happy tears, honey," Sarah responded, stroking her daughter's hair. "Just remembering how far we've come." Emily smiled, that smile that had evolved from shy to radiant over the years. "We're just getting started, Mom. Wait until you see what comes next." James laughed, that statement so typically Emily, always looking forward, always to the next problem, the next discovery. "Do you already have plans after the doctorate?" "3, actually," Emily responded with that mischievous gleam in her eyes. "But you'll have to wait to discover them. I like keeping the suspense." And as the sun set over the university campus, James thought about the long journey from that rainy day in his office. A journey that had begun with fraud and betrayal, but had transformed into a story of hope and potential. Emily had changed his company, but more importantly, she had changed his way of seeing the world. She had reminded him that genius knows no boundaries of age, gender, or socio-economic circumstances. And in that moment, observing the young woman who had saved his company playfully toying with equations that few adults would understand, James knew that the true miracle wasn't just Emily's extraordinary brain, but her courage to use it, even when everything and everyone told her she shouldn't. "Some call this luck," he murmured to himself, remembering the day Emily invaded his office. "I call it destiny, and somewhere in the universe, the numbers seem to agree. The end." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave a like and share with friends and family who need to hear this message of hope. To continue supporting stories like this and have access to exclusive content, consider becoming a channel member by clicking the Become a Member button below. Every donation helps us continue bringing inspiring stories like this to you. Comment below what was your favorite part and what story you'd like to hear next.